Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who are here sharing their expertise and wisdom so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, co-founder of HLH Growth Solutions, where we help businesses scale using outside-the-box visibility strategies. And I'm excited to be bringing you my guest today. But before we dive in, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Please make sure you stick around to the end because I have a special gift for you. Now, without further ado, I want to welcome my guest, Toby Barrick with 3Helix. So welcome, Toby, to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time with me today. So, Toby, can you start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about 3Helix, and your role within the company.
Sure, absolutely. I can start with a little bit of my background. So I'm a little bit of an odd duck in the medical world, and then I worked in the private sector first. I worked with Centene and their international markets division before medical school. And then I dual degreed MD MBA. I found a love of startups and venture capital from there. So I worked in every sort of startup, all the way from, out of a founder professor's lab all the way to Series A and beyond, and everything from medical device to digital health and to biotech. Currently, I work at 3Helix. We're a company that's doing extracellular matrix-based therapies. It's a really scientific subject, but we get really excited about it. We're making therapeutics and cosmetics and diagnostics for fibrotic and inflammatory diseases.
So can you tell us more about who your company serves, your products, and who you work with and things like that?
Absolutely. So 3Helix was founded on an interesting idea, which is that a lot of people have been doing a lot of work on how all of these crazy diseases get started, in anything from liver fibrosis all the way to aged skin. What we found is that if you take a healthy cell and you put it in a diseased environment, the cell will start acting as if it's diseased, which tells us that a lot of what we've been doing is actually the reverse of what we should be doing. So the cell isn't doing anything wrong. It's the environment telling the cell what to do. So we like to think we're the first, and I think we are the first and definitely the best company looking at how to change the environment around the cell to make it work better. We do that in a couple of different ways. The first one coming to market is a cosmetic technology commercialized through our partner BASF. Should be hitting the market actually this December. So keep an eye on the shelves for that. And which we have the world's best at the moment, at least, anti-aging cream. So that should be exciting for anyone listening.
That's
and then a couple of other things. That technology can be used a lot of very interesting ways. So we're also tackling a couple of the major fibrotic and inflammatory diseases. We hope that we can be curing some of the things that modern medicine right now can't. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of years.
Well, you have a lot going on and a lot coming out. So that's really exciting. So we definitely want to keep up with what's happening with you all. What inspired you to join 3Helix, and let's start there. What inspired you to join them?
I first ran into 3Helix when I was on the venture side. I was working for OCA Ventures, a venture fund out of Chicago, with a few of my mentors, to Bob Saunders and Donna Sun. And we interviewed 3Helix, who at the time was focused a little bit elsewhere. But me and the CEO got to talking about the potential of the technology and how there's certain markets where this really could be used in a very interesting way. And then I initially came on as a consultant and then joined the team at the executive level to drive a pivot towards using the technology in more of a diagnostic capacity, where it had been used in the life sciences previously, to creating these cosmetics and therapeutics with the CEO.
So you, if I'm correct, you hold both an MD and an MBA.
That's right.
How has this dual background shaped how you lead 3Helix and the way you approach biotech startup growth?
That's a very interesting question. So I think physician leaders are, they come in many different forms. Oftentimes we're the scientists in the group. There's a few of us that are, more focused on how these markets work and more the strategy side. And that's I think the value of having the MD and the MBA. So one thing that's incredibly difficult, especially in the American healthcare system, is finding areas in which all the incentives are aligned. I mean, we really have a nightmare of guns pointed at each other's heads in terms of insurers and pharma companies and hospitals. So being able to navigate that, create strategies that are financially viable, know the industries that are surrounding you, and how to make a company that has an offering that leads to payment and doesn't fall short of certain incentives, is, I think, where my style really shines. So mainly in the strategy capacity. And then, for a lot of biotech, especially, the topics are all very esoteric. They're all so scientific. So, it's sort of you can think of it as like the strategist that can speak the language is hopefully what I offer.
Well, you were sharing with us some of the things that are coming out. And so you have a lot of exciting things in the works. Many startups struggle with execution, even when they have amazing ideas. The idea is really, really strong. What's your company's proven process for moving from discovery to commercialization?
Yeah, and this is I think a good case in point for the importance of strategy and a point where a lot of biotechs fail. So especially in the biotech world where, your bets can be expensive and you don't have enough cash or runway to really execute on the biggest things up front. And some of the smaller things are less exciting. There's a lot of strategy involved in charting a course to how do we take this idea and turn it into the thing that we know it can be. For 3Helix, that's been an exercise in strategy from the very beginning. So, when we first conceived of our first products, and it's a really new strategy, a new way to take on, just a new approach to disease treatment, treating from the outside in instead of directly at the cell surface. You know, that's a benefit and a drawback. It's completely new, which means, we have carte blanche to tackle any number of diseases. But if there's one thing the FDA hates, and some investors, it's things that are too new. Because you need so much more proof to say that this isn't going to fail because it's so different from what everyone else has always seen. So our process has always really been looking at the requirement. What are the things that we need to get done in order to convince people? And that comes from that understanding of the incentives, the understanding of where these common potholes are from the investment side, from the regulatory side, and then from the strategic side. Where are the common points of failure and addressing those up front? So for us, that was one of the reasons why we initially went into cosmetics, is because by any other name, it's a very similar thought as to what we're doing in the therapeutic world. But the road is shorter, it's more capitally efficient. We develop skills and know-how that's useful in the therapeutic world and even submittable if you know the right regulatory pathways. Currently, we use Australia's, which our cosmetic data will work for. And then, doing things where you can take those learnings and, use them as a force multiplier for the next thing that you do, and eventually hit the targets that you need to hit without using, years and years of time and capital.
I'm curious, what's the typical timeline for you all to go from idea through the process into that end result? Does it change? Is it dependent on the product that you're working on, or is there kind of like the specific like a red tape timeline into moving through that next process?
There definitely is. And it varies very much by what you're trying to do. So, an equivalent technology, if you change the indication, will have such a different time to market. And that's one of the main things that we strategize around. So for instance, our technology can be used to tackle things like cancer, but getting a product approved for cancer is very expensive. And it takes a really long time. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a product yet that's approved, and you need to address that proof point of jumping from animals to humans and proving that it really does work the way you say it does, then the first thing to do is although we, of course, our team really would love to tackle that problem first. We know it's not the most efficient one. We have to take one that's a shorter route. So it varies from mode of delivery and indication. So for us, one of the ways that we charted a shorter course was by taking a dermal mode of delivery. So if you apply something to your skin, generally speaking, that's not going to cause something bad enough that you'd have to worry in a clinical trial, which means that translates to shorter costs or shorter timelines and lower costs. And then once you've sort of proven those proof points, strategic partners and funders will be a little bit more willing to take you to the next step with those larger indications that might require you to do something, say, for instance, with injection, which can potentially cause a problem, but you've already proven it's safe in a more controlled environment.
So you with your background, I feel like you're the best person to answer this. So what's key skills or insights do physician leaders bring to startup ventures, especially in biotech, that maybe non-clinicians may overlook?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of versions of the answer to that question. My personal background is a little bit more on the operations and strategic side than I know a lot of physicians are. But one thing that a lot of physicians have in common, especially when it comes to early stage biotech, is the translational aspect. So many biotech ventures are founded with predominantly scientific teams on the PhD side. And there's a missing clinical component where things like indication selection, so knowing where a core capability of, say, changing how a T cell functions, where is that useful? What are the more common or more morbid diseases? What treatments are out there that, there might be gaps in the market where you can say, well, there really isn't a treatment that works for this disease. This may work there. Or, where are some common pitfalls where you'd say, well, it might work for that disease, but it's so morbid that this trial is going to bankrupt you before you ever get to prove it. So you have to go somewhere else first, and then you can try to eventually get there. So I think I'd say that the clinician really is the key piece in translating from the bench to the bedside because they know sort of how to take a core scientific idea and mold it into something that's more useful at the clinic.
Mm. Why do you believe there are relatively fewer physicians in startup CEO or leadership roles, even though their background gives them unique advantages?
Oh, there's a lot of very good answers to that question. I think the core answer is opportunity cost. So a physician it's a very hard role to get into. You spend years and years of your life getting into it. It's a steady salary, it's security, and stopping at any point comes with real costs that you can't restart. So I think a lot of physicians like to get involved in startup life, but they just won't, they're not willing to make the jump to full time because they know if they jump, then they can't go back very easily. But that being said, there are those that do. And there's also, I feel like if you've talked to a lot of physicians in leadership roles, the difference between those that are successful in startups and those that tend to not be is the willingness to say that you're not the smartest one in the room. A lot of physician leaders are very confident in their clinical skills. They've honed a lifetime of clinical knowledge, and it can be very difficult to go into a new environment and accept a more junior position, look around and say, I know a lot about my field, but we're in somewhere else now, and I have to be the one to sit back and learn again. And so that can also mean that a lot of physicians, when they first make the jump, they may be CEO from, day one to a team of 5 or 10, and then they have to take a back seat. But that can be a difference in moving forward, is accepting that there are fields within in business that traditional medical training really just doesn't cover. And being willing to learn and let others lead in that capacity can be the difference between being the CEO when you're a larger company or having to take a step back and let someone else who can lead step in.
Yeah.
One thing that you sometimes will see is if you have a non-technical person leading a very deeply technical product, and I think that speaks to the fact that the skill set necessary for a leader is someone who can take advice from the experts.
I'd like to switch gears a little bit to going to market because you have some things, you were talking about some products that you have coming out. What are some of the ways that you're going to market? Like what's working for you? And have you tried some things that haven't worked for you as well?
Yeah, a ton. So, early in our company's history, we were a pure life science tools company. So we made, products that were useful in pretty much just the laboratory setting. And that's an excellent place to start entering the market because there's not a lot of regulatory stuff going on. You can really just make a product, certify that it says what you say it does, and then you're immediately there. But it's a very difficult market to enter. It's very, very sparse, and the return customer lifetime value can be low with a high customer acquisition cost. So it's not the best market to enter. You have to convince scientists that you really know their field as well as they do just to get them to buy a product, and they may only need it once. So it's a very difficult market to enter. We have been a little bit successful there, but it's not that, the ceiling is low. I think a success story for us has been the cosmetic market. We looked at the cosmetic market and we said, okay, this is a very consumerist market. This is going to be, regardless of our scientific success, there's a lot that goes into this that is going to be marketing related. There's going to be packaging and distribution and things that potentially, is not our skill set. And so we knew right away that this is best done by partnership. We're not going to win fist fight with someone like the Estee Lauders and the L'Oreals in the world if we're on the same shelf. And so, we looked at how should we best execute on commercialization, and we found a great partner in BASF. And I think one of the potential benefits there is if you look at the supply chain of the market you're trying to enter, sometimes there's big brands that you recognize up in the front where you'd say, well, these are the ones I want to partner with. But if you look throughout the supply chain, you may see that actually we fit better with the person that's their supplier or the person that's their supplier. There's different areas that you can enter, and it's not always the most consumer recognized brand that's the best fit. And for us, BASF was an excellent partner because they are the people that make all the active ingredients, and that's our skill. We're the active ingredient maker. And so they were the perfect partner to help us distribute, our new landmark active ingredient for cosmetics. So I think the learning from our go-to-market there is really doing the similar sort of thing. You analyze who gets the most benefit from your entry into the market, and they're going to be the person that's going to be most interested in your success.
So you are in two markets then, therapeutic and cosmetics, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so in business, we hear, especially as a startup, that you should niche. You should really find your lane. I'm curious, when was it that you decided to add on to another one, or did you come out of the gate doing both different, because they seem very different to me. Maybe they're not, but they seem very different to me. So was that a challenge, or what was it? What was the thought process behind like, oh, well, let's do two?
That's a very good question. And I think, especially with a technology like ours, one of the things that happened when I first came in was we had to make the decision to stop boiling the ocean. We have applications across diagnostics, therapeutics, cosmetics, medical device. And if you try to do all these things at once, you're right. It's not possible, or at least it's unbelievable. And I had a mentor way back when who said it's better to be credible than incredible. You do have to pick a lane. And so our first lane that we picked was actually cosmetics. And the reason we did that was because, sort of hearkening back, we're such a new and different technology that we knew that the therapeutic investor set, the partners that we would need, we're going to need a level of proof that we couldn't get the funding to provide at the stage that we were at that time. The cosmetic market is somewhat similar depending on where you choose to enter to the therapeutic market. If you're someone who's trying to sell to the major cosmetic corporations, they have, academic teams that rival a lot of the therapeutics companies. If you go straight to consumer, that's not the case. So, if you can put anything on a shelf and say it works in cosmetics, that's a potential weakness of the industry. And that's not where we're good at competing, because we have something that's new and different and better. And so the place to compete with that is one step backwards in the supply chain, going to these companies that have these very good teams looking at the science of the dermis and the skin and show them what we have. And then for them, it's a relatively shorter path. So they can see a new technology coming in and disrupting more easily, more readily, and with a shorter runway than would be needed in therapeutics. So we went there first because we knew that with a really new technology, it was a better fit. Then we knew that the leap from cosmetics to therapeutics was shorter. So we broke, a 10-foot jump into two 5-foot jumps, made it more digestible. We gave ourselves success points, proof points in the scientific literature that we would be able to parlay into inertia that we could ride all the way through. For us, going to a dermal delivery drug from a cosmetic delivery of something similar is much more believable because we've already done it. If we were to say we have an idea, we've never executed on it, believe us, give us some money and we'll do it, it's a little bit harder. And so by breaking that up into 2 steps, we were able to do a lot more than we would have been able to otherwise. But to your point, we did have to deprioritize some of the other line items. So things like medical device and diagnostics did have to take a back seat, and we sort of allowed them to have opportunities arise, but we never devoted significant resources to them. Whereas, otherwise we might have been able to move them forward a few steps, but we knew it's not what we can do now.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, your process and your journey on that. Cause I know a lot of people, like when they go, especially when they're starting up, oh, I want to help. We can do so much, right? And we can help so many different type of people with what we do. And but it's really important. I love that what you shared, that your mentor shared with you. It's better to be credible than incredible. That is like the quote of this session. So thank you. And I'm going to take that with me because I've never heard that before. It's exciting. Okay, so what's next, Toby, for 3Helix? Like for over the next 12 months, I don't know if that's long enough. Maybe with biotech, I think you kind of need a longer runway, maybe. But what's next for you? And I would say in the next, I know you have some things coming out, but for the next 12 to 24 months, let's say.
Yes. Biotech is a long horizon business, but the cosmetic business is quickly moving. So, we have our first, second, and third products coming out in the cosmetic world within the next 12 to 24 months. You should start seeing it on the shelves. If you see anything that says Helix, that's us. On the therapeutic front, we should be sort of making progress. Of course, that's much slower. So, we're entering human trials with our lead indications. And then we'll, in the next 24 months, we should be somewhere near phase 2, entering phase 3. Usually it's a 4 to 5 year process to get all the way through if you're moving quickly. So hopefully, 24 months down the road, we'll have some good progress, but we'll still not be, unfortunately, ready to cure anybody at the bedside just yet, but we'll be making our very best effort.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
And we'll have you back when you can tell us what that looks like when it gets
yeah, I have a more ornate background.
Reach out and we'll bring you back on for the therapeutic side of it. So can you share, or there's this like under wraps in the moment, like any of the shelves we can look out for you on?
Well, that one is under wraps for the moment.
All right, everybody, I tried.
There, it'll be with your major cosmetic brands. So, you're not going to see a bottle on the shelf that says Helix, but you'll see it under your regular cosmetic brands with hopefully a footnote somewhere that says that we're there, and potentially some really exciting new claims about how much younger you might be able to look if you use the products.
Okay. So whenever you hear about anti-aging, we're going to look for Helix is what we're looking for in the ingredient.
So. Yep, there you go.
See, I'm getting there. I'm learning, guys. I'm learning. I'm trying to get the information for you. But we're going to show you how to reach out to Toby as well, and how to connect with them and learn more about 3Helix in a minute. So you don't have to rely on the little information I have for y'all, because I know a lot of the women are like, anything anti-aging, we're in, Toby. So can you share with me? Let me see what my next question is. Oh, what challenges? With your goals and everything that you have and what's next for you all coming up, are there any challenges that could hold you back from reaching that? Or maybe a better question is, if I could give you a magic wand and you can wave it over one issue, one challenge you're having right now, and you can go poof and take it away, what would it be and why?
Well, that's a complicated topic. We live in a lot of very interesting times. I think there's an old Irish curse somewhere that says, may you live in interesting times. We certainly do. So there's been a lot of shakeup in the biotech world. The US used to be the unrivaled leader in biotech, and we're seeing that sort of decline at the moment with the shakeups in the grant funding area, and also a lot of rapid change with the FDA. And that change leads to risk aversion on the investor side. And it makes early stage biotech funding really quite difficult. For us, we're lucky we have some very good backers. We're lucky to have made really landmark strides pretty recently to show that we're doing well, and then we're having success on that front. But that's not necessarily the case for everybody, to be sure. So I think if we could fix one thing, I think I'd bring back the grant funding environment we had a few years ago, because that really helps biotech companies bridge the early stages. That from when we had an idea and we had to convince people that it worked. Historically, the thing that did that was SBIR grants from the National Institute of Health. They give you funding to go do that initial scientific proof so that a private sector investor has enough that they think that they can invest in it. And nowadays, that's unfortunately not happening as much.
So before we wrap, Toby, I want to talk a little bit about trends. What trends in biotech, diagnostics, or life sciences should business leaders be watching over the next 3 to 5 years, and how is 3Helix positioning itself?
Yep. There's a lot of very interesting trends that sort of go along with what we're seeing, and a lot of policy and a lot of scientific advancement. It's no trouble to go out on a limb and say AI is probably going to be changing the environment. A lot of AI drug development has been going on, and we're starting to see that slow down a little bit, because there's been a little bit of a a lack of translation, where a lot of things that, the promise of all of these engines has been very good, but the promise was that it would lead to a higher success rate of landmark drugs being developed, and that's not materialized. And so the industry is moving slightly away from that. But at the same time, the capabilities for AI drug development are being developed within a lot of the major pharma companies. So these companies are sort of looking for new platforms that they can take and plug into their AI engines. So the need for a new foundational science is emerging. And then at the same time, we have a lot of funding golf, a lot of change that has people looking towards new applications of older technology. So, we're seeing a lot of, this might be a little bit more on the scientific side, but bispecific antibodies, for instance, it's a technology that's been around for a while, but it's all the rage now, because you're taking two things that people know work and combining them into one new thing that should be marginally better. And that sort of technology is receiving a lot of interest. And so for us, one of the capabilities that we have that we're leveraging to try to, match the needs of the market, and to it doesn't require fundamental change on our part. It was already a capability that we had, but it's sort of a change in how we tell the story of our benefits from, you can do X, Y, and Z, to actually, hold on, maybe we should highlight the Z part a little bit more, is we can deliver other drugs. So for a lot of antibodies, for instance, you can't control where they go everywhere. And so our technology can take them and put them only in the area of disease to reduce side effects and exposures to other parts of the body. And that's sort of our way of looking at the market and saying the risk tolerance just isn't there right now. Otherwise, a lot of the things we're doing are pretty new. And this is a good way for us to use our core competencies and the core capabilities of our technology and apply them in an area where we think that there's more interest from our strategic partners at the moment.
Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned that you have been heavily involved. You have a lot of experience in the startup space, with 3Helix being part of that journey. And do you have any advice for any of our listeners who might be leading a startup based on what you've learned over your experience and your time and your years of being part of startups?
Yeah. It's the startup world is exciting and new, and the only rule is that there are no rules. So the classic quote is move fast and break things. Depending on where you are and how much regulatory burden you have, sometimes you can do more of that or less of that. But my advice to everyone is always, whoever you thought you needed to do whatever it is that you're doing, you don't need them. A lot of startup founders say, well, if only we could get this huge account from somebody, then we could do something. And the answer is almost always the reverse. If you start doing the thing and it is valuable to the people, they will come to you. Most common thing I would see on the venture side when that was sort of the main component of my career was people saying, well, we need so many millions of dollars and 40% of it is marketing. And the truth of the matter is, as an early stage company, if you have product market fit, you don't need that much marketing money. Your first customers will see what you're doing and they will come clamoring to find you. If you have to market in your first deployment days, if you have to spend half your budget on marketing, you should be rethinking your product market fit.
Great advice. So Toby, how can our listeners reach out to you, connect with you, and learn more about 3Helix?
I have my LinkedIn, which I believe will be supplying. I have an email address on there. Please feel free to reach out. I'm always available to help advise, mentor anyone who is trying to get going in the startup space, or who's deploying something in healthcare and needs some help analyzing where they think it fits and how to best position it in the market.
Thank you for sharing. And yes, as Toby mentioned, we will have all of Toby's contact information in the show notes. So you can go there and grab it, but you can find him on LinkedIn. You can also go to 3helix.com to check out their website, but make sure you connect with him. He is pretty amazing, as you all have heard here today. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. If you know of anybody that would benefit from learning more about 3Helix or connecting with Toby, please share this episode with them. Our goal is to help other people grow as much as possible. So the more we need you to help us do that, and we do that by asking you to share. So if you could do that for us, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you are listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, same thing. We'd love you to share the episode with somebody that you believe would benefit from hearing Toby's journey and hearing from him today, as well as learning about 3Helix. And if you can leave a review and you can hit that 5 stars, we'd love it. That allows the platform to share our podcast, our little podcast, with more and more people and get the message of our amazing guests like Toby here today out into the world. I promised y'all a gift, so here it is. Toby shared he works with a lot of partnerships. That's how they get their product to market. There's a lot of different ways of getting your product to market, just like Toby was sharing his advice on marketing. If you feel like you're doing a lot of things and you're spending a lot of your budget on things that just aren't working, go ahead and download our free Spotlight to Scale blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint, and it'll share with you some ideas and thoughts that you may not have thought of that might be a lot less expensive than things you might be spending on right now. So just feel free to download it. It's free. It's yours. Toby, thank you for your time today. Before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to say or share that I didn't get to ask you or we didn't touch on today?
I think we touched on a lot of good things. I think I'd encourage anyone thinking of going out and starting something to just do it. You see a lot of people out there getting a lot of bad ideas, a lot of good motion. So if you've got a good idea and you have some confidence behind it, don't wait on anything. Just try to go do it and see what happens. Yeah,
today's the day. Time is now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And B, it's more important to be credible than incredible.
Exactly. There it is.
I love that. Thank you, Toby, so much for your time. This has been amazing. Thank you all for listening to Toby and I today. Make sure, please go share this episode with those that you think could benefit, and have an amazing rest of your day. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlights.